Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Brev. Welcome to another MLB The Show 21 video. Stage 3 of Team Affinity is out, and these cards are absolutely stacked. In this video, I'm going to be ranking all 30 of them in tiers to hopefully help you guys decide who to go after first when you're grinding these Team Affinity cards. Again, these are just my opinions, and honestly, if the collection reward is as good as we think it's going to be, you're probably going to end up getting all 30 of these eventually anyway, but it should give you a good indicator of who I think is going to be good and ranked as well. Friendly reminder to like the video, subscribe to the channel for more MLB The Show 21 content, and just some disclaimers out of the way in the beginning. We're going to be ranking them in tiers, so we're going to go S tier, A tier, B tier, and C tier. And I just want to say, like, all of these cards that were released today are absolutely insanely good. I'm rating these cards compared to each other so we can kind of create a priority on what I think you should grind first, but just because I rate a guy in C tier in this video does not mean he's bad at all. In fact, a lot of the guys I rate in C tier in this video are probably going to be better than most of the options in the game. Just goes to show how good these cards are. Starting it off in S tier, we have the only 99 overall in the release, Jacob deGrom. I mean, words can't even describe how good this card is. 119 hits per 9 is almost maxed out, so your opponent's PCI is going to be basically as small as possible. He carries over his updated control and break ratings from his live series cards, so the 4-seamer and slider are 97 plus control, and the 4-seam and slider break is 99. And of course, he carries Outlier 1, which means his 4-seam fastball is going to be pumping in there at 102 miles an hour. And another disclaimer, all of these cards in stage 3 of Team Affinity actually have their live series quirks as well. So active quirks like Homebody, Night Player, and Stopper are activated on these cards, and there are some of them on all of them. These give slight boosts in game when activated, so they're definitely extremely useful. But there's no question in my mind this is the best starting pitcher in the game. He may be number 2 if that Shohei Ohtani card was real. I'm making this video like 30 minutes after the content dropped, and there's a 99 Shohei that possibly got leaked. But regardless, this card is definitively top 2 starting pitcher in the game, and I don't use the term in-game very often, but this card is basically in-game. I mean, if you get him to parallel 5, he's got almost maxed out hits per 9 as a starting pitcher. On top of Outlier, this card is just completely disgusting. And by the way, here's his hitting stats for those of you wondering. Very good for a pitcher, honestly. This card will be in everyone's rotation for a long time, so get used to hitting against him and get used to dominating with him on the mound also. Next in S tier, and also from the NL East, we have 98 Trea Turner. This is another card beloved by the community. It seems like his cards always play extremely well. This is basically budget Jackie Robinson with more power versus right and worse fielding. The positional versatility is obviously a plus, and I'm going to be saying that for a couple cards in this video, but this is just a really good card. Obviously, the one knock against him is his defense, so if you do value defense at these positions, I understand, but I will say specifically at shortstop and second base, the fact that he has 99 speed is going to give him a lot more range compared to somebody else that may have 72 fielding. I think this card is going to play just fine in the middle infield, and I think I might be rocking him at second base. But just beautiful splits on the card as well. More power versus right, more contact versus left. I love splits like this. And again, the live series quirks are just loaded on this card. He's got Road Warrior, Day Player, Unfazed, Dead Red, Breaking Ball Hitter, Rally Monkey, Fighter, and Situational Hitter. That is 8 active quirks in game for this card. With the swing and the quirks, this guy's going to play way above his attributes power-wise, and they're already pretty good. I really love this card. Extremely good option in the infield, and you can always play him in center field too if you want. Next in S tier, we have 98 overall Big Aaron Judge. This one may be a little controversial for S tier just because his hitting stats versus righties aren't the greatest compared to other cards in this release, but you guys know I love fielding in the outfield, and he's got maxed out everything except for arm. He's a little slow at 60 speed, but hopefully the fielding and reaction will make up for that, and honestly, as a personal bias, I always seem to do extremely well with Aaron Judge cards. I will say, however, some people in the community do not like how tall he is. If you play in a zoomed in camera slot, the strike zone seems incredibly big. That can throw some people off at times. So this may be a card where you don't agree with me. That is S tier, and that's okay. But I think this card is incredibly good, and I can't wait to use him. And here's a card you probably weren't expecting to see in S tier, 96 Mike Zunino from the Reyes. Now, keep in mind, most people do not play this game on Hall of Fame or Legend difficulty. Most people play this game on All-Star. If you play this game on All-Star, that 45 contact versus right is really not going to bother you that much. And this is a catcher card with 125 power against both sides, and also brings 118 contact versus lefties. And on top of that, he has the catcher pop time quirk, which makes him throw down to second base much faster than cards that don't. So even though he's only got 79 arm, he's going to be getting up and throwing the ball faster, which will make up for it. Plus, you can increase his arm strength and fielding through the parallel system. This card is sneaky good. And yeah, the 45 contact versus right is terrible. But for what he is, this card is super valuable, especially in a spot where most people have Kyle Schwarber as well. Some sort of Schwarber Zunino platoon could be really nasty. And again, another card historically that has a really good swing and seems to get good results at the plate all the time. Can't stress to you guys enough how sneaky good I think this card is. Do not sleep on him as a top catcher option in the entire game right now. Keeping with the catcher thing, we have 97 Salvador Perez in S tier as well. Maxed out versus lefties, extremely valuable. Again, the argument for a Schwarber platoon is good with Perez as well. And obviously this Salvador Perez card is going to fare a lot better on higher difficulties versus right-handed pitching, so he's a bit more well-rounded card at the plate. However, he does not have the catcher pop time quirk, so he is going to play worse defensively than Zunino. I'm spending maybe a bit too much time comparing Zunino and Perez with each other rather than with catchers throughout the rest of the game. Both of them are incredible options at catcher, and both of them are extremely strong in a situation where you also want to run Kyle Schwarber. Can't stress enough that if you platoon correctly or have the guy available on the bench for a big pinch hit late in the game, you could be looking at a catcher position that's basically maxed out versus both sides of the plate. And again, Salvador Perez, another card beloved by the community for his swing, always produces well. Wow, we have a lot of cards in S tier. Finishing it off, we're gonna have two relievers. First one is this 97 Josh Hader. As far as left-handed relievers go, this card is in game. Obviously maxed out hits per 9, K per 9, on top of pitch repertoire, which Hader has the best version of himself that he's gonna get since they did give him a changeup. I do want to point out as well, he's got 99 break on his two-seam, and throughout my years facing Josh Hader, I've always thought his two-seam was his best pitch. Unfortunately, the control on it is really bad, but that's an interesting dynamic to have such a high break two-seam. Regardless, left-handed relievers are always one of the hardest things to come by throughout the year. This guy's got maxed out per 9s with 3 to 4 good pitches. Not much to say other than basically an in-game left-handed reliever. And finishing out S tier in the NL Central as well is 96 Alex Reyes. Y'all better get used to facing this card, I'm just gonna tell you right now. If you guys didn't know, Alex Reyes is a converted starting pitcher, so that's why his stamina is so high, 45 stamina. This is a reliever card that could easily go 3 innings for you online, on top of maxed out hits per 9, and he's got Outlier 2, which means his sinker is gonna go up to 99 miles an hour. To me, on paper, this card looks like relief pitcher Edward Cabrera. I'm just gonna say it. I really think he's gonna be a top tier bullpen option. I will say his control is a little suspect, especially on the sinker, only 72 control and 69 break, but we've already seen what Outlier sinkers can do with a glitchy release this year, and I actually do think Alex Reyes release is pretty good. So for a relief pitcher, this is a seriously good option, and I think the stamina just takes it over the top for me. If your opponent can't figure out the Outlier sinker, you can leave this guy in for 2, 3, 4 innings. Moving on to A tier, and remember, these cards in A tier are not bad at all. In fact, they're really good, and they're not even that much worse than the cards in S tier. First off is this 98 Nick Castellanos, which just looks crazy good. Obviously, with that defense and speed, you ideally want to play this guy at first base or third base. These are positions where, in my experience, defense doesn't matter as much, and if you look at him through the lens of a third baseman, this card puts Troy Glaus to shame, in my opinion. He's not completely maxed out versus lefties like Troy Glaus is, but 124, 111 is still really good, and he is so much better versus righties. 125, 99 versus righties. Another card with beautiful splits, kind of like Trea Turner, but in the inverse, he's got higher contact versus right, but more power versus left. Cards like these are incredibly difficult to pitch to. This card is going to be a staple in a lot of people's corner infield. Card is going to absolutely rake. Moving on in A tier, another fan favorite with an amazing swing, 98 Matt Olsen. I like that this card has slightly reverse splits. It's going to make him a lot easier to hit with against left-handed pitching, and if you are someone that does value defense at first base, then this is definitely your guy. He's going to bring it at the plate and in the field. 90 fielding equates to diamond defense in game, so this is a diamond defense first baseman with incredibly good power numbers and an insanely good swing. Olsen's kind of in the Joey Gallo territory where he always seems to run into one, but really like this card. Next in A tier, we have 98 Ozzie Albies, who possibly could be a little lower in B tier just because those hitting stats versus righties. If that Ohtani card is real, and on top of Jacob deGrom being in everyone's rotation, right-handed hitting stats are going to become a lot more valuable. But I think he's really good for what he is. Obviously, because he's a switch hitter, the low hitting stats versus righties is not going to be as big of an issue because you don't have a handedness disadvantage. Almost maxed out versus lefties, good speed, good swing, and shortstop secondary is also very interesting. Overall, really solid card, and I will mention also that he is super short, so just like I talked about with Aaron Judge, the difference in strike zone may bother you if you play in a zoomed in camera slot when you're hitting, so just keep that in mind. But historically, throughout the years, in my experience, Ozzie Albies plays way above his stats against righties, and I think this card is very solid. Sticking with the switch hitter theme, and another card you may not have expected to see this high, 97 Eduardo Eduardo Escobar in A tier. I rate this card so high for some obvious reasons, being he's a switch hitter with really good power, another card who I think has a really good swing, and obviously the positional versatility is amazing. You can play this guy anywhere you want except center field and catcher. I actually think this is a top tier bench option in the game right now, with the fact that he can play everywhere, hits both sides equally, and switch hits. Don't sleep on this card. I think he's really good. I know the Diamondbacks are terrible this year. Don't let it affect you. I really like the look of this card a lot. And rounding out A tier, we have another reliever, 95 Gregory Soto. Some people's rankings may have this card higher, but I have a couple of concerns about him that make him not S tier for me. Obviously, let's talk about the good things about this card first. Almost maxed out hits per 9. You'll be at maxed out hits per 9 at parallel 2. He's got Outlier 1, which means this is another card that's going to throw a 99-mile-an-hour sinker, this time from the left side, very much like Zach Britton in that regard. And sinker, slider, four-seam, changeup is a pretty good repertoire for a relief pitcher. However, my concerns with this card are the control and the fact that his changeup basically isn't a real pitch. Like, this card has a changeup, but technically he doesn't. This guy's changeup has 25 control and 58 break. That's about as unusable of a pitch as I can possibly think of. This card scares me a bit with his control on the mound. I think you're going to have to resort to throwing the slider a lot, and that changeup is just going to be an absolute meatball. Again, good card, not going to knock on him anymore. Left-hander relievers, again, are hard to come by, but just take this card on paper with a grain of salt. Obviously, I have to use him first, but I'm not sure I would rely on this guy in a super high leverage situation with those control ratings. And that's it for A tier. We're going to move on to B tier now. Again, gonna say it again, just because a card's in B tier or C tier does not mean it's a bad card, just means it's lower on the priority list. And now, because we're getting into the lower tiers, I'm gonna spend less time on each card and kind of just give a brief synopsis on why I have them rated there. Cedric Mullins obviously looks incredible at the plate and really good speed as well, but his defense concerns me for a center fielder. I think he gets better if you can get him to parallel 3 and get the gold shield, but even then, 50 arm strength is really bad. Again, I value defense a lot in the outfield. You may value offense more in the outfield, and if you do, then this may be a card to look into for sure. Especially with the speed he has, this card is going to be a goon at the plate. Next is Teoscar Hernandez. Again, really good stats for his lefties, but the fielding concerns me in the outfield. Again, if you don't care about fielding as much as I do, this card could be higher. Really good two-handed compact swing on this card too. Next in B tier is Jose Ramirez, who I think is the card I'm most disappointed in upon seeing. When they announced Jose Ramirez as the card, I was super excited, but the splits on this card just aren't good enough in my opinion. Again, if you play on All-Star, the 80 contact versus right is not going to bother you much, so this card's going to be really good when he hits right-handed pitching. But 103.73 versus lefties is seriously underwhelming compared to the other options in this release. Just wish he had a bunch more contact or a bunch more power versus left, and this card would have been S tier most likely. Also, another guy who's short, so keep that in mind. Adolis Garcia, same category as Cedric Mullins, but a little more power-oriented instead of contact-oriented, but a lot of the same things still apply. If you don't really care about defense in the outfield, this card is a goon, especially with that 86 speed and over 113 power versus both sides. Next is Yusei Kikuchi. This card's interesting to me. I really wish he had a sinker, and if he did, he would have been a lot higher. This is kind of a really cute finesse pitcher from the left side in a meta that involves a lot of guys that just throw really hard, so definitely possible you could catch your opponent off guard using a card like this. And also, I want to say, despite it being his fourth pitch, his changeup has 96 control and 98 break. His cutter, despite being his primary pitch, actually looks like his worst pitch on paper. I don't know, this is just a weird card, very interesting. I want to try him. I imagine if you queue into someone who's just really used to velocity and you spam sliders and changeups, you could actually have a really good time. Definitely a type of card we don't see very often, so that's why he's intriguing to me. Next in B tier, a bit of a controversial one. I'm sure some other people are going to have this card rated higher. I have JT Realmuto here just because his hitting stats are not that great compared to other options now, but if you are looking for a defensive catcher, this is absolutely your man. Not only does he have 98 arm strength, so it just takes parallel 1 to max that out, but he does have the catcher pop time quirk as well, so with the 98 arm strength and the catcher pop time, this is easily the best catcher in the game in regards to throwing out base stealers. But yeah, the hitting stats just don't do it for me. Obviously, he's got the quirks and a good swing, which will help him play up, but I just think there's better options at the plate, and I personally value offense more at catcher. Adam Frazier in B tier, another weird card. The positional versatility and the fact that he can have diamond defense everywhere at parallel 2 is awesome. I just don't think he has enough power versus right. 54 power versus right is just not good enough, but solid card literally everywhere else. Next is Jake Cronenworth, kind of on the same plane as Adam Frazier, but has a lot more power versus right and sacrifices some contact for it. Again, another guy with infield positional versatility, so I like that, and good speed as well. And lastly, in B tier, we have 97 Chris Taylor. Taylor for much of the same reasons that I've already mentioned with a lot of other cards. And rounding out the video with the C tier cards, I have 98 Rafael Devers. I just don't think he hits well enough versus lefties. Third base and first base are some of the deepest positions in the game. I think you can do better in terms of an overall well-rounded card. I would use Castellanos over this card in a heartbeat, and I wouldn't even think twice about it. But if you do get him versus a righty, obviously gonna play very well. The next two cards are outfielders that basically can't start for you because their fielding slash speed is so bad. Good at the plate, but rated so low because they essentially can't be starters in my opinion unless you really don't care about defense in the outfield. This Michael Brantley isn't even necessarily better at the plate than someone like Cedric Mullins, who's gonna play a lot better defense with his speed as well. So this card is just kind of really meh for me. And obviously we've got Nelson Cruz, top tier bench bat, but just cannot start with 52 fielding, 40 speed. And for the rest of the C tier cards, it's gonna be pitchers. 97 Craig Kimbrel is all the way down here. Yes, he's got maxed out per nines, but you just can't do a whole lot with two fastballs and a curveball. You're just never gonna fool anybody with this card. It's just so easy to hit fastball, curveball. It's unfortunate. Maybe we'll see a better Kimbrel card later in the year that features a changeup, and maybe they'll upgrade his two-seam to sinker or something. But for now, despite how good the per nines look, this card just doesn't have the pitches to get it done. And just not having the pitches to get it done is gonna be a recurring theme as we roll through the final four of these cards. Again, when I say a card is bad in C tier, especially with these pitchers in the stage 3 release, it does not mean they're bad in general. It just means they're bad compared to the other cards in the release. These starting pitchers that I have in C tier actually have really good per nines for starting pitchers, so if you play on higher difficulties, you could get away with it just because your opponent's PCI is going to be so small. But yeah, Carlos Rodon, probably the best of the four in this C tier, but I personally find his release to be very easy to read as a hitter. Just not really a fan of his cards this year. Herman Marquez, whose picture still hasn't loaded. This card could definitely be rated a little bit higher. He does have good velocity and a sinker. The unfortunate thing is that his off-speed pitches are all basically the exact same speed. He can hit a little better than most starting pitchers. I know some people like that about this card, but just not really my cup of tea. Second to last, we have Kevin Gausman from the Giants. Actually really good hits per nine for a starting pitcher, but again, his off-speed pitches are all around roughly the same speed, which is not going to do you many favors fooling hitters at the plate. He does have 99 control and 93 break on the splitter, which is pretty interesting, but I think looking at this card from a holistic view, I don't think his pitch repertoire is good enough. And speaking of pitch repertoires that just aren't good enough, we have Trevor Rogers rounding out the entire set. This card's got a generic pitch repertoire with a generic pitch release. Probably not a card you're going to be seeing very much online. And forgive me for saying Trevor Rogers was the last card. I somehow forgot about this Jared Walsh card. He is in C tier for me for much of the same reasons that Rafael Devers was, just not good enough versus lefties. And so as a quick recap, in S tier we had Jacob deGrom, Trea Turner, Aaron Judge, Mike Zunino, Salvador Perez, Josh Hader, and Alex Reyes. In A tier we had Nick Castellanos, Matt Olsen, Ozzie Albies, Eduardo Escobar, and Gregory Soto. In B tier we had Cedric Mullins, Teoscar Hernandez, Jose Ramirez, Adolis Garcia, Yusei Kikuchi, JT Realmuto, Adam Frazier, Jake Cronenworth, and Chris Taylor. And in C tier we had Rafael Devers, Jared Walsh, Nelson Cruz, Michael Brantley, Carlos Rodon, Craig Kimbrel, Kevin Gausman, Herman Marquez, and Trevor Rogers. Based on these rankings, I think the best division to target first would be the NL East. From here, you get Jacob deGrom and Trea Turner, who were rated in S tier, and Ozzie Albies, who is rated in A tier. And then from there, I would look to go after either the NL Central or the AL East. The NL Central is going to give you a couple of S tier relievers in Josh Hader and Alex Reyes, and an A tier infielder in Nick Castellanos, while the AL East is going to give you a couple of S tier hitters in Aaron Judge and Mike Zunino. The worst division overall, in my opinion, is the NL West, with the AL West being a close second. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think down in the comments section below and who you're going to target first in this content release. Would love to hear your feedback. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Take care, and I'll see y'all next time.